So with a lot of the seminal black metal folky albums, like like Agarlock and Over, and their artwork is intrinsic to, like you said before, Nathan, when you're walking through the city, listening to Mantle, how the sky sort of connected with you while listening to music. And I think the album cover represents that perfectly as well. So listening to Inheritance, I think that does exactly the same thing. Like the cover perfectly encapsulates what you're going to be hearing. So was a conscious effort to sort of find the best artwork that represents the songs, or was it just by chance?
It was more of a
kind of
conceptual
both.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah. It was sort of like we're very obviously with Musk Ox, we don't have any lyrics, so the artwork is very important in the way that because that's going to give people the visual representation to add to the music. But it was it was intentional, but also by chance, like because we never really discussed it. It kind of just, I had sort of an idea, and I took this photographer to a place like literally 5 minutes from my house where there's this railroad. Like it's not a Photoshop thing. It's literally just over here, and we took these photos of it, and it worked with the concept. And then I thought like there was one and I saw, I was like, yeah, this is definitely it. I see it. And then Raph was like, actually, I like this one. And then everyone was like, yeah, I like that one. And it's like, you guys, that's it. Like I didn't, it's like there's always those surprises. And then once he sent it, and I was like, I don't know. And then he sent it in black and white, and it was like, I just want to keep looking at this image, like, and it works with kind of the themes. And but again, that's the beauty of making an album. Like there's so many surprises, like I never originally I had another idea of like taking a photo of like monuments around Ottawa, like statues and these kinds of things, like, but then like there was one that I thought of that I took a photo of, but then like it reminded me of these railroad tracks, so I went to it was just, it's funny how that happens.
When we got the black and white, that's when it really clicked. I remember, I think we were all like still a little bit on the fence, like, oh, we haven't got like the thing yet that we need for the cover. And then just that look seemed to make sense. But what I think is really funny is how a lot of people have described the album as being super dark and heavy. I never thought that the album was that dark, but I guess the first half kind of is. But then I think that your album artwork reinforces, again, it's like what we were talking about with the mix. Like it reinforces certain impressions, And I think it's really funny because this album cover is a lot like the cover for my band The Visit's first album, which has like this black and white cover, and we're like standing in the snow. It's like kind of almost like in a blizzard, everything's like white, and there's these bare trees and stuff. And obviously it's it's quite nearby to where those railroad tracks were shot. So it's like the same kind of trees and stuff. And a lot of people lumped that record in with a lot of the sort of the black metal stuff that was coming out that year. So a lot of people kind of thought, oh yeah, this record is really bleak and cold and harsh Canadian winters and black metal. And I thought that was really funny because it's like totally not what I had in mind really. But I think also the sound of the record and the look of the cover reinforced that. And so I think in this case it's the sort of the same thing. And I think that we were so far inside it that, like, for us, this this mega track, Hindsight, I guess, was kind of like, okay, well, we have this really long track, but it's done now. And I think we were more focused on maybe songs like Ritual and Weightless that were maybe a bit more different from what we had done before. But like, I think that it's clear from the feedback, like, that the standout track for a lot of people is Hindsight. And so I think that maybe that track with the artwork, everything, it sort of embodies how they perceive the record as being this it's like dark and bleak and kind of a heavier Musk Ox and more autumnal and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so it's kind of cool to sort of see that feedback, because I think it's just so different from the conversations that we had been having by the time we finished the record.
So what sort of vibes were you getting off it before the feedback? What sort of vibes were you getting off the music?
I want to hear what Evan has to say, but I'm just curious what Evan has to say about.
Oh, sorry.
The vibe.
The feedback.
No, but what was the question? It was about the vibe. What vibe were you getting from the music?
Like just
That
in
was the
general
question.
before it came out, I guess. Like just sort of your impression of the character of the album.
Oh, right. Yeah, I definitely don't see it as so bleak and dark. You know, it's full of harmonies. It's full of layerings. Um, I feel that it's no, there's just there's a lot of action. There's a lot happening in the music. It's very vibrant. I guess some people, because it's sort of like slow, it begins very slow and drawn out. People associate that maybe with something a little bit more bleak and dark for some reason. But I don't. Good question. I haven't really thought about it. But I guess for me, no, I feel like it's there's just a lot going on, a lot of activity. It's kind of like nature, you know, like there's birds over here, butterflies. It kind of is a reflection of nature, where sometimes everything is very still. There's the still water. Everything is like at dawn, and then all of a sudden the sun comes up, and you have a lot of activity. And then the sun goes down. I feel like it is very representative of the cycle of nature within the music. So I think that's a way of seeing it, where it goes from really slow and expansive to a lot of activity, a lot happening, and then it kind of just dies out. So you kind of like see like a cycle of the day go through, and I think in many ways that's how I see the music represented as cyclic and not necessarily representative of just one aspect of bleakness or darkness, or because definitely you can't just associate the music as just that. There's you can also say the complete opposite of that. You know, it can be joyful and just full of activity, full of enthusiasm, optimism. So how can you just label? For me, how can you just label it as one
thing?
as being like I don't understand that viewpoint, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, lump it as being two things, but there is like a juxtaposition of it's like beauty mixed with melancholy. Like there is like a real beauty to it. But I do see what people are getting at when they say it's dark. I won't say it's like sort of visceral or anything like that, but yeah, there is a shade of sadness to it.
I think it's kind of there's like a cloud that like I think there it's sort of, to me it feels sort of like there's this kind of cloud, but then at the end it's sort of the clouds kind of part. But also what's funny is like the original idea for the artwork was like this very bleak statue juxtaposed against a clear blue sky. Like I never thought the album would. To me I was like, I think this album needs full color. Right. And then I saw this like bleak, this like album thing that people associate with like suicidal, depressive black metal, and I'm like, this looks great. I don't know, like this is not what I thought, but it looks great. Like, and it worked. Like it just, I didn't think it would be like that. Like that's the beauty of making art, is like it reveals itself in ways that you're like, oh, like when we finished the record, if you had been like, let's do a black and white cover, I would have been like, no, we already, first album was black and white. Like, no, this needs to be different. But this just worked.
Yeah, I think it was like a simple but effective solution, and I think that the main thing that drew us to it was kind of the connection with the overall album concept and the album title and the idea of like sort of what you're taking from what you've inherited and where you're going, and sort of the responsibility that you carry through the future, regardless of what your past baggage might be, and that could be as an individual or as a species, but that's kind of part of the idea of being on those tracks and like being on that road, I guess, and not knowing where it goes, but knowing where you've come from.
Mm-hmm. It's like, do you just keep following it into just like, into the thorns, or do you just, it's a moment of reflection of just like, you know, and inheritance as a concept, I love it because it represents past, present, and future, right? Because you inherit something which paints the present, which, you know, it's this whole cycle, and so the album is kind of meant to be this sort of, you know, you're looking at these tracks like, do we just keep going into this, like, follow this path that just like disintegrates?
It's really interesting. So are you getting at the responsibility we have? Like, so we awesome into the future. Is that how you sort of base the album on, like, thematically? It's not
that overt. It's more about it's more a general theme. Like, it's less like, okay, humans, what do we do? Like, it's more like, take a look around and make up and see for yourself, and what do you see? How do you interpret? And what's interesting is, like, I have a friend who listened to the record, and he got back to me and he said, oh, like, the record feels very social, it feels very human. And I thought it was cool that he was saying that, because that was, you know, partly the intention, but I had never told him that. And so the fact that he was able to get that from it, I think was I don't know, it's nice when those kind of connections happen.
Yeah. Cool. So after the success of the Woodfall Garden in 2014, how come it took so long to write and release Inheritance?
Well, we broke up several times.
Did you?
No, we didn't.
No. You got me.
Yeah, you know, tumultuous relationship. It's hard to have a three-way.
It's more like a long-distance relationship.
Yeah, well, actually, that's one thing. So when we released Woodfall, I mean, I was living in a different city, and, like, so we would only see each other if we had to do a show or something like that. And there's a number of factors. I would mainly blame it on the fact that I was too busy with different projects. But we were all doing things. We all released albums in that time, and it's like, I had 2 records that came out in 2015, and, like, you know, Nate had like 2 records that came out in 2016. Obviously, one of them being the Night Watch. So, you know, both of you guys had the Boundaries that came out that year, and then I had another record that came out in 2017, and I started playing with Leprous and touring with them. And I remember, actually, after the first tour I did with them, it was the first leg of the Molina tour, I got back and I had like a couple of months, and then we're going to go out again for like 6 weeks in the States. So I was like, okay, you know, something has to be done here so that we don't like let this go on forever. Because I remember, I think 2015, we had all like gotten together and we had jammed a little bit on some of the new ideas. There was already like guitar written for a couple of the songs. There's like a few sketches already. And then we did Premonition as kind of like a demo. We basically wrote it all together in a day in the same room because we had a grant application. We were trying to get funding to make another record. So we just all got together and just made this thing and then recorded it. And that was like the first kind of version. But then, like, how would you say, like, when were the guitars kind of done? It's sort of like they were mostly...
Probably like 2014 or 2015. I remember, like, I was just accumulating guitar ideas, and then I had like a weekend, and I just sat down and I arranged all my guitar things into sort of like pretty much like the structure of the album as it is now. I was like, okay, ambient intro, epic, ballad thing, you know. And so so I just had a week. I had all these ideas, so I just was like, I'm gonna just do these rough drafts, and then I had that, and then kind of sat on that for a bit. I remember me and Evan we were living together at the time, and I remember we had jammed on some, like, that one, like, I remember we actually jammed on that, Evan, and that's kind of where that one came from. And then me and Raph spent a couple days working on stuff. It was just kind of spread out, but I think the main thing was that Raph was really busy, and then we had, you know, we did, sorry, I'm just hearing music in my headphones right now, so I just need to turn this off. That was very funny. It was just like, oh, what's happening? So it was kind of just sporadic, and we did a lot of records in the meantime, and that was part of it, right? 2 Night Watch records. I did a solo record, Raph did stuff, but so
the actual writing process, I don't think the actual writing didn't take that long, because it's like, yeah, you had like tabbed all that out. Then I wasn't basically able to get to it until like the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and then I just sat myself down at a keyboard and wrote all the cello and violin stuff. I was like screw this, like we need to just have something to play that we can work on, and because that was the way we had written Woodfall essentially. And I think we were going into this record not wanting to do it that way, but then when it was like, okay, like the guitar is basically written for like almost the entire record, we kind of had to do it that way. I think if you're going to try to compose everything like all together as a group, then you have to just do it all together as a group, you know, in the same room. You can't compose one instrument first and then compose the rest later. Like that's just like, that's a strategy for writing that requires you to work on paper. And so that's what we did. And then, so it was like, yeah, early 2018, we basically had the whole record written. And then, yeah, there were some other parts like Weightless I ended up extending that song quite a bit with the whole like ending section and stuff. So like some things got tweaked, and then we got together and we spent a bunch of time workshopping the songs together as a group and like rehearsing them, and we made some small changes. We actually made quite a few alterations to the arrangements. Yeah, so we kind of got together a couple of times, but it was only like fall 2019 that we were able to like say, okay, we're ready to book the studio and let's just record the album. And I think that once we got going on that, like we worked pretty efficiently on the actual tracking. And then there was the pandemic, so like we basically ended up just mixing via video chat for like an extended period. But because we had this kind of a little bit more flexibility with time, we were able to get more detailed on it, because originally we were going to go down to London for like 4 days and try to mix the whole record. And I was like,
oh, hell.
Imagine if we had spent only 4 days mixing all of that. It just wouldn't have happened.
Metal.
Yeah, that's why the pandemic actually gave us so much time to work on the mix. So I think it made the record, like having that time to just mix it just made it much better than I think it would have been otherwise.
That's one of the good things that ever came from the pandemic, and it is a lot of bands writing out new music, and like say, you afforded the time to sort of spend look at the finer details on your stuff. So yeah, that's good. So this actually kind of taps into my next question. So when it comes to writing for the album, obviously the music's really authentic and in tune with nature. So do you, I suppose, with the last answer, do you do it in your flat, or do you move away to somewhere rural to write the album, sort of get a better feel of your surroundings, or does that not really matter?
I think we're lucky in Ottawa because Ottawa has so much beautiful green space. Like if I walk this way, there's a giant river. There's actually 2 rivers in Ottawa, with a third one coming in from Quebec. There's a provincial park like 15-minute drive this way. Like we're really lucky that we're surrounded by nature. Like I go for a bike ride and there's like a giant canal. There's different, I'll see like 2 or 3 waterfalls. Like it's so, that's always kind of been an influence there. But with this music, actually, it was, I think with the first record and the demos, it was very nature centric, kind of like what Raph was saying with the cello album. It's like a world without humans. Like that was sort of like the influence for those. It was sort of like these isolated experiences of nature. And then Woodfall was sort of like humanity and nature kind of meeting. And then I think with this record, the idea was like it's a very human album. You know, I think with a lot of, I guess, nature folk, like it's very much like, okay, like nature, let's focus on that. And I love that kind of music, but I also, it didn't seem right to just, in this time of my life and in this time in the world, to make that kind of record. It didn't, you know, for me, it was this kind of, the 3 albums sort of make a trilogy, and it kind of starts in nature and then it ends more with like human nature and humans and that kind of thing. And so, but in terms of, composing in nature, definitely, like we're very lucky in Ottawa that we are so close to nature, so we can get out there pretty easily and get that inspiration whenever we want it, basically.
Yeah, we did record the album though in the country.
That's true.
In the woods. So that I mean, that was kind of the atmosphere we were in. We were in a nice space to do this last one. And actually, that reminded me also that like when we were working on Woodfall, like I remember I would like do these kind of writing sessions, and then I would write for a few hours, and then I would go on like a long bike ride in the woods, and I would come back, and then I would just kind of do it all again, like you know, and I think that was kind of playing into the vibe to, you know, like immersing yourself in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
We even imported some Musk Ox from Alaska.
Yeah.
Really?
Just joking.
Yeah.
No, but we were referencing we did record it. Again, it was in the woods, but it was only like a 20-minute drive, and it was in this wooden workshop, and so so that definitely changed it, because Woodfall was recorded like in a basement, like in the city, and then this one was actually the nature influence is always there. I mean, you can't. I think it's less about kind of like separating it and more about like integrating it. Yeah.
Right. Cool. This one's kind of for you, Raf. What's it like, or what the difference is playing with Musk Ox as opposed to a conventional band like Leprous?
It's a different approach. I mean, obviously, if you're playing in more of like a rock band setting, then you're listening for different things, and basically, I would say that both bands operate completely differently. With Musk Ox, it's like, you know, the way we operate. Obviously, we've known each other for a very long time, and we're quite like informal about the way we sort of get together and work on stuff. And I think we've taken our time quite a bit to sort of let things marinate and kind of gradually develop the sound and sort of do things in their right time. In terms of the way we perform, obviously it's like chamber music, so we're kind of just listening to each other at very close distance, and we don't we haven't used, for example, in-ear monitors at any point, you know, although we were talking about it. But like with Leprous, it's like every show I've done with them except for like one was done with in-ear monitors, and like we're on a click, and you know, you're adjusting your own mix basically for what you want to hear during the show. So I think the way you listen basically is very different in that context. So for example, with that stage setup, it's like the only stage sound that there is drums. Everything else is coming out the PA. There's no like monitors on stage. So that does affect the way you play together. I remember we did one show, this was like on the last tour we did, it was like in a small shop in Madrid, and it was like the only time we had ever done like a really unplugged thing, or at least that I had done it with those guys. And I remember it was kind of funny because it was obviously like a big shift from what we had been doing during the tour, but to me it was like, oh, this is really familiar and kind of easy in a way, because I'm used to doing these small shows, and like, you know, it's kind of how I came up, is like, you know, playing in like intimate spaces, often completely unplugged. So I think like those aspects, you know, are really different. But also like the role that I play in it is different too, because like, you know, obviously in terms of like composing music, like I do a lot more in Musk Ox, and in Leprous, it's like, I'm involved creatively, but in a different way. And like a lot of that comes down to like specific featured parts, or where like, the studio arrangement has to be converted into something live, and how do I interpret that, and how do I change it to suit the live setting, and what do I do with pedals and effects and stuff to kind of get that to fit into the sound. So those things are definitely really different too, just in terms of like creative involvement and responsibility within the bands, and so I would say like in Musk Ox, for example, I do more rhythmic stuff. You know, I'm more involved in like playing things that are part of the sort of rhythmic framework. And in Leprous, like I don't do that much of that really. It's more melodic. You know, it's more like traditional string lines when we're all playing together. And then there's a lot of moments where I've done sort of more like improvisation, like solo improvisation, you know, before the set or after, before the encore, like in between pieces. And so it's kind of like, those are really the two extremes, I think, like the the very scripted playing and almost more classical, and then the completely improvised. And then with Musk Ox, it's like what we're doing is written, but I think it's kind of more in between those two.
Right, cool. You guys are 3 albums in as Musk Ox. What accomplishments are you most proud of, and where do you feel there's room for improvements?
I think right now, I think just having done the records that we've done, having been around as long as we've been around, I think there are certain moments that I'm really proud of. We've only ever done one show in Europe, and that was in Germany at the Wave Gothique Festival in Leipzig, and we opened for Wardruna. So that was a real kind of special moment that I look back on, and I'm like, oh wow, this was kind of before Wardruna really became as popular as they are now, and so that was special. I think, just, I don't know, being able to make this music and to have people interested in it, I think is something we're proud of. And I think for improvement, I mean, I don't know, I think that we, just go playing live more, maybe improving our live activity, I guess, hopefully doing some tours and finding a way to actually reach the fans that are listening to us.
Yeah, I would say definitely making this last record, for me, it's kind of, it feels like the culmination of everything we've been working on together. And it feels like, okay, all those years, kind of working very gradually have kind of paid off in that way, where we have something that really represents the work that we've done collectively. And I think also, speaking of the sort of longevity, being able to keep a band together for a long time and keep the same lineup and have everyone still be on board, that's very challenging. It's I think people take that for granted sometimes, but it is really hard. As adults, with different lives and stuff, it's things can pull you in different directions, but to be able to keep it going and to feel like it still has, we still have something to say with it is nice. And by the same token, being able to perform live more, I mean, I really hope that we can do that in the future and get out there more and share music from all the albums in a live context, and kind of act a little bit more in a sort of as a professional band in that sense, where we've sort of existed mostly as a band that's put out music and played a few sporadic shows, but we haven't really, I don't think we've really pushed it. We've really pushed our potential or really kind of stretched ourselves that much. And I'm kind of it's sort of sitting on the couch all day. It's kind of come on. It's let's push ourselves a little bit and kind of go to your edge a little bit more. I would like to see that in the future. And I mean, obviously, you have to have some moderation, because those types of things can break bands too. But that's also what brings bands to the next level. Yeah. Is going past what you think is possible and doing things that other bands aren't willing to do.
Yeah, I think we've only played about 20 live shows in the
last few years.
Is it just down to getting you all together to do live shows, or is there more to it?
Well, we just haven't pushed that hard for it. We haven't been okay, we need to do this and we're gonna book a tour. We're gonna some bands that really pound the pavement and kind of take all of the offers, whereas I think that we've been more selective and done things that sort of were convenient for us. But the truth is that being in a band is not convenient. You're gonna have to put up with a lot of shit. So you have to get out there and lose some money and play some shitty venues and play for nobody, and that's part of it. You can't just have the gravy. You're gonna have a lot of shit, but it's because we've never really been forced in any way to do it. We just haven't. Again, I'm talking about the things that we could improve on as a band. I think that's important to be aware of that stuff. And we've never been signed to a label, so there hasn't been any pressure to release a record at a certain time, and our fans have been very patient for the latest one, and so on and so forth. So we haven't really had to do something out of desperation. We've always been in a comfortable position.
Also with live, it's going to the States is not easy. It's not easy in terms of touring. That takes a certain amount of organization, visas, and all these kinds of things. And also, like, I think if we were a band and we were based in Europe, we probably would have already done tons of tours because there's so many more places to play. And in terms of Canada, it's like, you know, we've played Montreal, we've played Toronto. After Toronto, you know, you're gonna drive like for 24 hours maybe to get to like Winnipeg, and then it's like another 12 hours. You know, it's like touring Canada is especially with the kind of music that we make, like the infrastructure in Canada, there's a lot of like folk festivals and stuff, and we don't really fit anywhere. So I think, yeah, if we were based in Europe, probably we would have done a ton of shows because there's way more opportunities for this kind of music in these kinds of places. So, you know, we've gotten to do some cool shows and some cool opening spots, and we've toured with Agalloch and opened for them on some different tours. So that's been great. But yeah, it's like, that's also, I think, a fact. Geography is a factor as well, because it's like there's just not that many places around us, I guess.
Well, yeah, Canada, people don't really tour Canada unless they're folk artists in general. Like, how often do you see a cross-Canada tour, especially in one run? It's almost impossible to, well, I mean, financially in particular. I mean, that doesn't mean that theoretically, though, we could have done it because we can play a lot of smaller places. And the advantage of having a configuration like this is that we could play house concerts and make a lot of money. But definitely the States thing is pretty crappy for a Canadian artist. It's like, that's the reason why I think a big part of the reason why you don't see more Canadian groups at sort of a small to mid-sized level in the music industry, like kind of, they're not really very visible because it's like, you know, you can drive less than 2 hours and get to the States from here, but we need visas that cost us like $600 each. And there's all this paperwork and all this stuff. And then like your first US tour, you're definitely going to lose money. So it's like, it kind of disincentivizes going and doing it. Whereas like if we could go and do one-off shows without visas, then it would be a very different story, because there are a lot of places that are in relatively close driving distance.
I suppose if you causing enough waves, which is what you guys seem to be doing with your albums, you'll probably end up getting more opportunities, or even, you know, getting asked more to do live shows. So I suppose that you're inadvertently building your own sort of thing anyway, aren't you? So
and I've seen that also with bands like Agalloch, where it's like the first 10 years of their life, you know, they did a few kind of support tours, but you know, they weren't really able financially, you know, to do it. And then once they sort of like became more independent, you know, they'd been releasing amazing records every 4 years pretty much, and there was this huge fan base just waiting for it. And then once they started, it was like people were just waiting for it, you know. Or a band like Imperium that like they didn't play a live show for like the first 20 years of their life, and now it's like they'll do all these big theaters across Europe. So I think like I know for me, when I got into music, like I just wanted to make amazing albums. My mentality, and I'm not saying it's the right mentality, but it was like, I just want to make a bunch of albums that are so good that like people are gonna like it, and then there'll be an audience. But it'll take some time to make these good records. But I don't know. I think I like, in terms of money invested, like I haven't really invested much in touring. It's been mostly like in making the albums, and so hopefully people can hear it and we'll have some opportunities. I mean, I know that had COVID not happened, we probably would have booked some things. We definitely would have booked some things in the States and in Europe. So, you know,
I'll definitely be there at a UK show if it ever happens.
I was gonna say, like, you know, we could easily do a UK tour and have way more dates in good cities than we would in Canada. It's like, it's a way better music industry there. So yeah, and I know that we have a lot of folks over there that would want to see us, which is amazing. So yeah, I would definitely welcome it.
I just think as well, like you've already said anyway, like Europe seems to be more receptive to this kind of style anyway. It's probably down to the heritage or what have you, but yeah, I think it'd be a great success. Yeah.
I think just Europeans like music more. I mean, I hate to say it so bluntly, but it's actually true. Like, and governments too. It's like there's a lot of governments there that are just funding the arts more. Like here, it takes a lot to convince the government to provide certain subsidies and like certain funding for things, and to convince them that, oh yeah, okay, the musicians need this fee, like, oh, why do they need that fee? Like, can't they just play for like a really small honorarium, or like, can't they just play for nothing? You know, it's like, it's an issue of priorities. And that comes from like have certain values, and unfortunately, like, we have the bad end of the stick here, but that shouldn't be a reason to make excuses either. It's just, that's just happens to be where we live, but you know, we still have to make good music, and we still have to you know, have impact regardless of that.
Yeah. All right, guys, last question now. So now that you've made one of the best albums of 2021, what are the plans going forward?
Make the best album of 2022. No, wait. Of 2032. Yeah.
We're already preparing our face-apt band picture where we all are like, you know, have like big long gray beards and stuff like that, and we're aging with wrinkles and stuff.
Well, it's funny because like I used to read like this album was 5 years in the making, and you're like, whoa. And then I remember reading an album and it's like, this album was 9 years in the making, and I was like, really? Come on. Like, it's like it reaches a point where it's no longer impressive. It's like, oh, really? Like 20 years in the making. I'm like, oh no, I don't want that. Like, no, I think moving forward, like, obviously, you know, when we can play shows, we want to do that. But I think like finishing this record, it feels like, I don't know, it kind of feels like we have a clean slate now. I feel like we really wanted to create something. We really felt like we had unfinished business with Woodfall. Like, we felt like that was a big record, but it was definitely like a big reach. Like, we were just kind of just going for it, right? And so we knew we could make something, take that approach to the next level. And I feel like we don't need to do another record like this. I feel like now there's a clean slate where we can just kind of, you know, I'm just looking forward to like just getting together, the three of us. I'd love to write a record, just the three of us in a room, where it's like no paper, no scoring, like whatever we write, like something like that. Like maybe even a record of like shorter songs, like 10 short pieces that we all created together. And I don't know, like, but definitely for me, like, I'm always just excited about doing new music. Yeah.
I think we're kind of in a place now where we're more interested in embracing spontaneity as opposed to trying to calculate everything and kind of plan it out, because so many of the good things that happen in the creative process come sort of almost by chance. And but it's more just following intuition and being open to those things. And I think that over time we've learned to listen to that more within the kind of super detailed stuff that we do. But I think that our chemistry as a group has grown, and like our ability to communicate and work together as a team and make, you know, music that's cohesive and, you know, work together. All that stuff has gotten better. So definitely, I think we've talked a lot about, you know, whatever the next project is, it'll probably involve something a bit more kind of made in the moment, a little bit more, I guess. And yeah, probably a pretty big departure from the last record, but you can't say right now. We haven't written a single note for it yet. But what do you think, Evan?
I think we should move to Europe and become famous.
No. Sounds good.
I do have my French passport, so.
Oh, there we go. No, I'm looking forward to maybe spending like a weekend retreat somewhere in a cabin somewhere and just writing music from scratch. And I think that would be nice for personally. And I'm looking forward to, who knows, like we're saying, what the new music is even going to sound like. But it'll be fun to experiment, see what happens, to let the creative process happen in the moment. But so it'll be nice to even just get together, because we've been very isolated. So we hope to get together, make music again, get into that vibe again, and we'll see what life brings from there.
I think we want to do some like live videos, like in the studio kind of things, like, so, because since we can't really perform live, it'd be nice to film some videos of us playing these songs.
Oh, cool.
So that people can actually see it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. It was lovely talking to you. Like I say, Inheritance is a wonderful album. and I'm really glad you've brought it out, and it's managed to come onto my lap.
Thanks so much for having us.
No,
thank
thanks
you.
a lot. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. All right, guys.
All right, take care.
Yeah,
Take
catch
care.
you later.
Thanks for the support.
Yeah, no worries. See you later.